Sure. Consulting today has now become a comparatively new lucrative career choice as compared to the traditional core jobs that IITians find themselves attracted to. The idea of charming your client by the suggestions you put forward or help businesses grow by giving them valuable advice has started looking like an appealing option to many. Not to mention the money that consultants make is also sometimes envied on. But how do you become a consultant and how exactly should you prepare for its interview are the kind of questions that many people have in their minds. And that is exactly why we at OCS IIT Delhi have got this webinar planned. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Avi Vijayvargiya and I am an executive in OCS IIT Delhi. I will be moderating today's webinar along with Rishika Khanna, who is also an executive in OCS. I, on behalf of the entire Office of Career Services team, would like to extend a very warm welcome to each and everyone present here. This webinar is an attempt by OCS to familiarize our students with the consulting and the nitty-gritties of it. Hence the theme, Careers in Consulting and the tips to ace the consulting interview. The talk is being conducted in the following format. Part 1, which will be insights given by our senior panelists, which comprises of Mr. Anchit Goyal, Principal of the Boston Consulting Group, and Mr. Gopal Iyer, the Associate Director of Talent in Ernst & Young. The part 2 of the seminar will be guidance and tips for interview preparation by our alumni panelists. For which of them are first, Mr. Rishabh Verma, Senior Associate in BCG. Second, Mr. Ashish Kumar, he's a consultant in Bain and Company. Third, Mr. Karthik Sachdev, Associate in McKinsey and Company. In the meeting, we have with us Ms. Anisha Oberoi Madan, Head of Office of Career Services, IIT Delhi, and Ms. Reet Kaur, Central Team Member in OCS. Before beginning, I would like to remind all the viewers on YouTube to kindly put their questions in the chat box. We will take all of them together at the end of the seminar. Now, without further ado, I would like to request Ma'am Anisha to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Avi, for introducing the series. This is going to see on careers in various sectors. Consulting being the first one because many of you aspire to the consulting domain. And I thank the speakers who have agreed to join us and give us valuable time on Sunday on and give time to all of you, give their insights into it. I welcome Anchit and I welcome Mr. Iyer, Gopal Iyer. I welcome Ashish and Rishabh and Karthik. And we hope to have a fruitful discussion. So, like Avi had said, it will be in two parts. So we'll take questions for the first part after the first part and questions for the second part after the second part. So the first part, like he has already told you, will cover aspects on what you can expect in a career in consulting, which will be covered by Mr. Anchit Goyal and Mr. Gopal Iyer. I welcome all of you again and thank you for your time today. And I over to you, Avi. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, finally, let's move towards hearing what our panelists have to say. I would like to start with Mr. Anchit Goyal. Mr. Anchit Goyal is an alumnus of IIT Delhi from the batch of 2010 and from the branch of civil engineering. He is also an alumnus of IIM Calcutta from the 2012 batch. Mr. Goyal has work experience of around 8 years in management and strategy consulting, which was focused on telecom, media and technology verticals in India, broader South and Southeast Asia and Australia. He covered both business to business and business to consumer spaces on topics including business growth strategy, product design and launch, customer experience transformation, cost and operations optimization, among others. Currently, he is working as a senior principal at the Boston Consulting Group. I thank him for joining us today, and I would like to now request him to take over. Over to you, sir.
Hi everyone, and thanks Avi for the good introduction. I think you covered most of it. As he said, for the larger part of this decade, I have been in consulting, worked broad across across broader Asia Pacific region, primarily in the telecom, media, and technology space, across a range of topics, stable topics that consultants work on. No, and glad to be here and interacting with all of you. Uh, and I think as I was discussing with Avi and what he had shared, some topics of interest for students right now at your stage of career would be, say, what do consulting firms look for, right? In a consultant, and how should I prepare? Are the two standard questions I get from everyone who's at your stage. So just to delve right into it, considering we have limited time here. So see, what do we look for is a question. Now, we look for people who have some spike in their resume. And I'm sure all of you would have heard this n number of times from people before. Let me break it down for you. So see, when we typically go for shortlisting people and then hiring people, there is obviously a base profile that we have in mind, that a person has to have a minimum certain academics, he has to have a certain minimum in extracurriculars, etc. But what we really look for is whether that person has a passion for a particular thing. And that passion can be, say, in research, it can be in academics, it can be in extracurriculars, it can be in social service as well. But has that person excelled in that passion? Have you pursued it really well and taken it to the last level? And do you stand out as compared to your broader batch with respect to that? Is something we look for, right? And now, why do we look for that? Because as you go, and I have experienced this multiple times, right? When you go into the business world, it's not a particular line of thinking which will help you. It's not like, hey, if you have excelled in academics, then that's the only thing which matters. But any and every problem requires a multifaceted approach to solve, and that can also come from your learnings in, say, a sports arena. Maybe you have been playing cricket, football, excelled in that. The strategies that you apply there can also apply in the business world. So that is what we look for: well-rounded individuals who have excelled in one or two passions and really stand out. Uh, is what we look for. Right? So that's one, and happy to take questions on that later. The second part is, how do I prepare for consulting? See, and I have done this both while I was in IIT and then in IM as well. Uh, what we look for is basic problem solving skills, right? You at your stage are not required to know the industry in and out. You're not actually required to know the corporate world nuances as well. But what you are required to know is basics of problem solving. Are you able to, when given a problem, are you able to think about it clearly? Are you able to break it down into whatever two or three pieces that are there to be solved? And then are you able to apply some logical judgment onto it, which might or might not be actually feasible or practical in the business world, but have you thought through it completely? And then are you giving answers based on first principle logic? Is the only thing that we look for. That is part one. The other part obviously comes with the cultural fit. So will you as an individual also succeed in the company? And will the company also feel good having you in the system from a culture fit point of view? Is the other thing. Because if it doesn't gel well, both the individual and the company will not be feeling well at the end of it. So those are the two things we look for in terms of how do you go about this prepping, considering the final season is also coming up for the fourth year batch. See, start practicing some cases in groups. You can form case study groups. You can talk to your seniors who are already there in these consulting firms. B, I would suggest, first up, make your mind whether you want to be in consulting or not, even before starting prep. So talk to your seniors. They are the best people. They have been there for 1 or 2 years. They have seen what it will be like for you for the first couple of years at least. So get a sense whether that is something that you actually want to do or not going forward. Consulting is a wonderful opportunity for young students like you to actually go out there and almost do a dipstick into each of the industries, right? On 3, 4, 5 months projects, and get a sense of what kind of industries do you want to be in, what kind of topics interest you. You will not get such a multivaried sort of exposure in any other industry, frankly. So make up your mind, see whether that is something you want. And then in terms of preparation, obviously form case study groups, do case studies with seniors, with your batchmates, uh, talk to people more to understand how the business world works, at least your immediate seniors. I think that's it. It's not rocket science eventually. It's basic problem solving which people from IT Delhi, obviously all of you have. So nothing to be afraid of as such. Yeah, that was it. Over to you, Avi.
Thank you so much for those insights, sir. Now, moving on to Mr. Gopal Iyer. Mr. Iyer is a seasoned talent leader with over 17 years of experience working with large multinational organizations across various industries and geographies. Currently, with Ernst& Young, Mr. Gopal leads the Gig Now, a program that has a specific focus on attracting and engaging with people for gig assignments at Ernst& Young. He is a speaker in various HR forums and has spoken on numerous topics like the future skills in the world of HR, the future of work, the rise of gig economy, the relevance of current skills, among many others. He is a strategic management graduate from the Indian Institute of Management Kozhikode, a global resource professional and a certified career transitions coach. Having him over is a delight too. It's a real delight. Thank you so much for joining us with us today, and over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Avi. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir, you are.
Perfect. I missed about 12 minutes. So was there a specific question that you had asked?
No questions were asked right now. Questions will be dealt later on.
Sure. So thanks, Avi and Anchit. Hi, great to meet you. Great to meet you all on the call as well. It's a pleasure to be talking to all of you through the forum. I represent EY GDS, which is the global delivery services arm for EY, and we've been in the business for the last 20 years in India. We are a 45,000 strong organization in about 5 countries, and I'm here to talk to you about consulting more from an HR perspective. Like if I were to look at folks like yourselves to be joining us in EY in the consulting business, what would I really look at in terms of what skills you bring, what mindset you bring, and that's what I would quickly share in a few minutes, and then absolutely open to take any questions that you may have. So consulting as such, and I think I would not take away anything that Anchit shared. I think he shared wealth of experience, but more from a mindset. I think what I would say is if we have analytical mindset, ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn in a time like this where I think it's extremely volatile. I mean, we are all living in VUCA world, and I think if you look at the current pandemic situation, a lot of what we were doing in the last several years were, from a consulting perspective, were always looked upon as more like good to have, not really a must-have thing, or a spend towards consulting projects was considered to be discretionary spend and not so much from a much needed spend per se. And if you were to look at that and really look our careers from a consulting perspective, I would say we really need to look at ability to add value on every transaction, right? It's I think pandemic has proven one thing, that everything that you will do now from now on and going forward, be it technology consulting, be it business consulting, be it any other form of consulting, clients would look up to you for advice and guidance. And when you're starting your career, you're not supposed to be knowing everything on day one. I think a lot of what you would do is research, learn, and unlearning and relearning is even more important, because you will be one project after the other, or you could be on multiple projects. So you can't apply skills that you have gathered on one project on another. Probably if the industries are too different on the projects that you're working on. And that's what I would say. Your agility with which you can learn and unlearn and relearn is what is going to be utmost important. Are you innovative? Are you creative in your thoughts? are you going to be able to bring on value onto every transaction that you make is something that is going to be looked upon as well. And more so, do you have growth mindset? Can you move on and gather learnings from each of the project and apply it into the other industry and yet be successful? Those will be my opening comments to all of you. It's a testing time for all of us and all of you students as well. And I'll be more than happy to take any questions that you may have on how do you want to prepare yourself for the interviews and all of that.
Thank you so much for that informative opening remarks, sir. Now, I would request Rishika to take over.
Thank you, speakers, for giving such insightful information that would help students in decision making. So, moving on to question answer session, based on the questions we have received from students, I will address my first question to Mr. Gopal. Keeping in view the wide variety of options available to students in consulting, like finance consulting, IT consulting, operations and strategy consulting. So how should one decide that which path is best for one in consulting field?
It purely depends on what you have done so far, right? I mean, I think if you have had a specific liking towards a particular subject, you all learn one broad based um, uh, skills. You gather broad based skills while you're in IIT. Beyond that, I think it's a question that you need to ask yourself as to what closely aligns with what you want to do in next 3 years, 5 years, and so on. Not everyone can be good at IT. It requires you to have a specific mindset and a skill set as well. Not everyone is born to do strategy. Not everyone is born to do finance consulting. It requires finance background, additional skills that you may have to gather as well. So I think first questions that you need to ask yourself is, where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 years? What is it that you would like to be doing in the next 2 to 3 years or 5 years? Because all of that will help you decide on what additional skills that you need to gather, and that way you can move further and take up the respective roles in each of these fields.
Thank you, sir, for guiding in. My next question to Mr. Anchit would be, how your journey has been from a fresher to a senior level.
Did I lose or?
Hello.
Yeah, Rishika.
So my question is like how your journey has been from fresher to a senior level, and what all challenges have you faced in this journey?
It's a good question. It's been 8 9 years for me in consulting. See, I was a fresher. When you first enter into consulting, it's almost like being thrown into the deep end of the pool. But that's where you learn swimming, almost, right? So it was difficult. I think the first year was just about getting used to consulting. And it has two, three different aspects. Obviously, the type of problems you are solving is vastly different as compared to what you do in campus. That was one. Second, you had to deal with clients. In college, you are not taught to do that. So you have to latch onto that skill very quickly. So that was pretty much the first year spent in doing that. And second is just learning how to manage work and life, right? Because in college, it's mostly life. So how do you now manage the work part, which is suddenly creeped into your life? So the first 1 or 2 years were pretty much spent in that. And then when you start spending more time in consulting, at each level, a different skill set is exposed and developed. So for the first 1 or 2 years, or maybe I would say 3 or 4 years actually, you develop your core problem solving skills. So anything and everything which is thrown onto you, it's not always that you'll have somebody to guide you. You are expected to act more independent, act more creative when it comes to problem solving in consulting. So learning how to interact with senior level clients. You guys would have heard it quite often that as consultants, you get to deal with CEOs, CEO minus ones, etc. Frankly, in the first 2 years, 3 years, you actually get to interact with CEO minus ones. So the way you talk to them, how do you become sort of an advisor to them is again a skill and an art as well. So you learn that in the first 4 years. After which, it's more about how do you start managing things, you start getting into business development kind of things as well. So each year, each 2 years is is almost a learning step. Every year spent in consulting, you're learning something or the other. So that continues. In terms of challenges, frankly, see this getting used to this for the first 2 years was a challenge. Initially, the other part which you feel is that wow, I'm getting to travel so much, I'm getting to take flights, staying in hotels, etc. It starts getting to you after a point of time. So how do you delicately manage that and your private life as well? At some point of time, you will get married. So just balancing that part of your life also uh, is at times a challenge, but an interesting challenge to have. uh, you have to always optimize on your work and always ensure that you're pinpoint in terms of what you're doing. So that's a continuous learning journey. At some point of time, as you become senior, the business development part of it also gets into focus, which is again something. Sales obviously is a brilliant thing to learn. So that is what starts maybe after 6 7 years of your consulting life. So I would say it's been a continuous learning journey, that since I have developed different facets of my personality which I did not have in college. uh, and it's been a bit of a challenge on and off, but it's a good challenge to have in your life.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your experience. Would you like to elaborate the most interesting project you have worked on?
uh, there are many interesting projects that I have done, but frankly, I think the most interesting project for me has been a project I did in Indonesia. This was with a telecom company on launching a product for them. It was my first international project. This was like 5 years back. But the sheer learning from it, going into a different culture, going into a different city, adjusting to that culture, adjusting to the corporate culture, which was quite different from what it is in India. Doing that and then working. So when you launch a product, it's about working with a large cross-functional team. There's somebody from IT, somebody from sales, somebody from customer service that you need to work on. In a foreign country, in a foreign culture, just doing all of that, working with a cross-functional team of 20 people. I think that was a challenge, but that was one of the most interesting pieces I've done, given the sheer complexity of the product that we were looking to launch, the cultural change that was there for me, uh, and the language barrier as well to an extent. So it was challenging, but it was pretty interesting and fulfilling when we finally launched that.
Thank you, sir. My next question is for Gopal, sir. There is a lot of buzz around buddy programs floated by consulting firms like the buddy cases being evaluative or having an impact on selection procedures. So, could you comment on that?
I think Gopal sir is not able to hear and he's having some
Uh,
audio issues.
Yeah, he's having some issues. So, Mr. Goyal, if you could just answer this question.
Sorry, I had some issues as well. Could you repeat the question, please?
She's asking that the students believe that the buddy programs are very evaluative in nature. So, could you throw some insights on how evaluative it actually is?
See, buddy programs are completely meant to help you get an insight into how the company works. Each company, be it BCG, Bain, McKinsey, EY, PwC, all of these companies work pretty differently inside, both from a way they approach problems, both from a way they interact with clients, as well as the culture of the firm. So, buddy
Now
programs are
moving on to
actually
the
a very
second
good
part of
window.
this webinar, which is
Sorry.
sorry sir, sorry. Please continue.
Sorry. So I was saying that each company has a different culture as well. So these buddy programs are meant as a window for you to get to know that the best. These buddy programs are helpful in the sense that they, let's say, these people who are your buddies have been in the firm for 1 or 2 years, right? They can give you an in-depth sense of how the firm works. They can also help you prepare because they have been in that situation. They have done real cases. They can give you examples of those cases to help you succeed the best you can. That's about it. We don't put that much stress into buddy programs. Hey, go and evaluate this guy, that guy. Doesn't happen that way. It's purely meant as a window for you to get to know the company better. And you should. I would encourage all of you to use it like that as well.
There's a related question to this. Some students are asking that how do you evaluate the culture fit part of it? What exactly do you look for in a culture fit interview?
See, culture fit. So, firstly, there's no separate culture fit interview. It's a common interview, but as part of that, see, culture is a very intangible thing for anybody to define. It's based on how the person, the interviewer, is feeling about the interviewee, the way they are interacting. You get a soft sense of whether this person, this personality will fit in the company's culture. And it has to be vice versa as well. Through all your interactions with the buddies, with the interviewers, you are supposed to also form a sense that what is the kind of culture, what is the kind of people that are there in this company. Don't just go for the, say, this company is good, or I just want to do consulting. Look at the culture of the company as well. If you really want to go there, talk to people based on interviews, you would get a good sense and base your decision on that as well. And that is how we do it as well. I can't define that, hey, these are the two metrics we look for in a culture interview, but it's just how you are as a person, which comes across in an interview. We form a soft evaluation basis that.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Next question is like, what are the perks of pursuing MBA for consulting? Like, how does it help or give an edge during selection?
Sorry, is it to me or Gopal?
Gopal sir hasn't joined yet.
Okay. So see, uh, frankly, some of the best consultants I have worked with, many of them have not had MBA degrees. So I would say, while it is a difference, don't consider it to be a must. What I would say, but MBA, it gives you a good sense of how businesses work. You first is just the jugglery of it. So the jargon of it, you get to understand the jargon when you land into a first project. At least having done an MBA, you understand what is happening. Second, having done MBA, you do specific courses in, say, marketing and finance, etc., which give you a good sense of how things work. Otherwise, when you come from an IT, you're good problem solvers, you are good at analytics and all those things, but it takes you some time to build upon the business nuances. Say, if you have to launch a product, how do you market that product? That is not something which is naturally not taught in IITs or undergraduate programs, but that is something you get a good handle for after you do an MBA. But having said that, the core principle of consulting is it depends on the logical problem solving abilities of a person. And that is something I feel, and at least I have seen everybody who comes from an IIT undergraduate programs, they're decent at. And that's one of the criteria that we have as well while interviewing. So I would say MBA is not critical for success, but it might just aid you having a slightly smoother journey. But more often than not, people come around. I've seen people from undergrad programs who join us. They spend 1 or 2 years just learning these nuances, but they catch on pretty fast.
Thank you, sir. One more question to Mr. Anjit. Students are asking, like, what does the partner look for in the final interview round?
See, from first interview to final interview, things really do not change. The kind of metrics and criteria we are looking at pretty much remain the same. When a partner goes for the final round, that means you have actually aced 1 or 2 rounds before that, and your core skills have already been tested to some extent by, say, a manager, a principal, and then you go to a partner. So when you land up at a partner, he might actually briefly look at, hey, okay, just validating that your problem solving skills, etc., are fine through a very short case. But he is more looking at whether this person will fit in my firm or not. And that is where a very heavy part of culture fit also comes in, because the partner, having spent 10 number of years in that company, knows the kind of people that that company is looking for, right? And that's what the partner then evaluates based on your discussion, your interest, the level of passion you bring to a particular point. That is what the partner is then looking at. Whether this is the kind of passion which will really take this consulting firm forward, whether he is the kind of person who will gel well with my other people who are working in the consulting firm. That's the primary thing which the partner in a final round is looking at, more than your problem solving skills or anything else.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Gopal sir have joined. So my next question would be for Gopal sir. How is a company like Fin Mechanics that also has a consulting profile different from consulting roles in companies like uh, Bain and Kearney or BCG? Like, how is it different?
I think the role predominantly remains the same. It is the organization's client base and their approach. There is something which is the secret recipe for each of the organization, which is what keeps differing between all the organizations. But other than that, I think fundamentally what we do remains the same, but different based on the clients we cater to. Anchit, would you have a different view on that?
No, I think you're correct. So, see, when you graduate from an undergrad campus, your role really does not change across consulting
Yeah,
firms.
yeah,
Pretty much remains the same.
absolutely.
Now that consulting firm probably at times have different niches. They're probably more strong in a particular
Sure.
industry, in a particular topic. So that is where you probably get siphoned off to, and that is where you probably work. But the kind of things that you're doing on a first project in the first 1 or 2 years does not really
Yeah,
change.
absolutely.
Okay, sir.
There was one question that the students had asked, which I'll also now post to Mr. Iyer, because Mr. Goyal just answered it a few minutes back.
Sure.
This was regarding culture fit. So students were interested in the nuances that you look at from all perspectives on how a person is going to fit into a culture, if you can just guide them.
I think one of the first things that every student should do based on how they're going to approach the interview is research the organization really well. Research meaning understand who they are, what they are into, what are the clients that they cater to, what industries that they work with, what is their purpose, what is their mission statement, and I think you need to really spend some time before the day of the interview understanding the organization really well, because you need to now then prepare a response to the questions based on the purpose and the values of the organization. So if the organization, like EY, I mean, we value respect, integrity a lot, and I think it is no different than any other organization. But our purpose is to build a better working world, and everything that we do is in alignment with that piece. Now, if I were to really look at behaviors that are in alignment with that, I would look at whether this person is great with teaming. I would look at whether this person is innovative in his mindset. Does he have a growth mindset? Um, Expansive mindset. And I think all of those would help immensely if people were to do research before the interview.
Thank you, sir. Before we end the session, I would like to ask the last question from both of you. In your opinion, what is the future of consulting?
Ashit, do you want to take that first?
Why don't you get it? Go ahead.
Sure. So I'm not a consultant myself, so I'll give you more from a perspective of an talent management standpoint. I think, as I said, it's an extremely disruptive world that we're all part of, and I think it would continue to challenge anything and everything that we do for ourselves, for our clients. The ability to do more with less, the ability to innovate, the ability to disrupt is going to be of utmost importance for anyone and everyone joining and being part of the organizations as well. So all our offerings as we move forward as an industry, consulting as an industry, would be to help the clients be better in what they are doing. And I think it would mean that in the pace where information is readily available, in the pace at which things are changing as such as well. You got to be on your foot, and you kind of need to run and get things done at a very fast-paced environment. And I think that's what is going to be the next 3, 5, 10 years, or even beyond for that matter. And it is going to be the survival of the fittest in the industry. And I think that's what we will continue to see evolve.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, the other thing which we are increasingly seeing in consulting is just the level of how do I put it? From a client point of view, the ask has gone beyond just broad-based consulting as well. So while
Absolutely.
broad-based consulting will still continue to hold good, but there are these topic niches which are coming up. So demand for very high expertise in particular topics, be it digital, be it AI, machine learning, those are things which will also gain prominence beyond the staple work of strategy, operations transformation, cost savings, etc. that consultants do. But those things will also gain prominence, and that is something which consulting firms, I think, will also look for when it comes when it comes to recruitment.
Yeah.
So that is the other thing. And secondly, implementation sort of work has already been gaining traction, and I think that will gain more and more traction as well going forward.
Absolutely. And I would just add two more things to what the list that Anchit shared. I would say resilience and sustainability would be the focus. Most of the industries today are really looking at what is it that they can do differently to remain in the business. And I think resilience plays a huge part. And with the kind of challenges that we're going through from a recent pandemic, and even otherwise from a climate standpoint, sustainability will be key as well.
Thank you, sir, for your insights and helpful advice for the students. Now handing over to Avi.
Thank you so much, Rishika. And finally, thank you, Mr. Anchit Goyal and Mr. Gopal Iyer, for joining us today and giving us your valuable time on a Sunday afternoon. I'm sure the insights that you gave to the questions will prove to be extremely valuable to everyone who is seeing this. Now, moving on to the second part of this webinar, which is focused on guidance and tips for the interview preparation by our alumni panelists. Let's begin with Mr. Karthik Sachdev. Karthik is an alumnus of IIT Delhi from the batch of 2015 and from the branch of Electrical Power Engineering. He has also a minor degree in business management from the Department of Management Studies, IIT Delhi. He has worked as an assistant manager of operations in ITC Limited for about an year, post which he worked as an analyst in McKinsey and Company. He is currently an associate in McKinsey and Company. I would request him to kindly share his insights. Over to you, sir.
Hey, hi everyone. Thanks a lot, Avi, for introduction. Great to speak to all of you. So, I would like to spend maximum of my time answering questions from the students, but quickly throwing some light on what I feel is most important in terms of interview preparation, especially given the pandemic. So, see, in any consulting firm, be it McKinsey, Bain, BCG, the core focus of an interview is structure, which all of you must be knowing by now. So this becomes more and more important because I'm assuming this time the interviews will be done virtually. So how do you prepare for that? Because see, the piece of paper that you are working on while giving the interviews, the same won't be visible to the person sitting interviewing you. So it becomes really, you should think and prepare accordingly in terms of how the discussion will be happening. Another quick advice that I would like to give is don't just focus on cases from the book, because I know we all spend a lot of time going book after book, covering as many cases as possible. To a certain extent, it helps, but beyond a limit, it is not very helpful. So once you have built your basics, once you have your frameworks laid out, which when I say your frameworks, don't try to copy any frameworks. Once you have figured out how you solve cases, then there is no point of spending or covering each and every, like you sometimes what I've seen people is they want to do n number of cases. That doesn't help. But what helps is doing some unstructured cases beyond the book. So because you never know what the partner or what you will get in an interview. So also practice some unstructured cases and focus a lot on what we were discussing, culture fit. So the personal experience bit of the interview. So prepare accordingly and prepare. What we look for is also the intrinsics and personal experience, not just the structuring. So prepare in all the dimensions. That's what I would say. And prepare looking at the current scenario of how the interviews will happen.
Thank you so much for the quick insights, sir. Now, moving on to Mr. Ashish Kumar. Mr. Kumar is an alumnus of IIT Delhi from the batch of 2017 and from the branch of electrical engineering. During his time here at IIT Delhi, he was the institute captain of basketball team and a house secretary and mess secretary of the Satpura hostel. After graduating in 2017, he joined Bain and Company and is currently working as a consultant there. Now, I would request him to kindly take over.
Thank you so much, Avi, for that kind introduction. Just one minor change. I was not the best secretary, I was the sports secretary. So, well, that's out of the way now. Let me just start by saying what my experience was when I was sitting for placements, right? And from that, let's kind of delve into, you know, what my advice would be to the kids who are going to enter placement season now. So I had a fairly smooth experience, by the way. I had decided that I wanted to do consulting. I was talking to a lot of people who had already done it, right? And then I applied to all consulting firms, got shortlisted, had a certain inclination towards Bain. The buddy program started like a month before the final interview started, right? And you know, the buddy program really helped. It really helps everyone just understand what consulting is from the people who are actually doing it right now. So that really helped. Developed that affinity towards Bain. My first interview was also with Bain, had 2 rounds. They gave me an offer, and here I am at Bain. So extremely smooth experience. If I were to give advice to people, and you know, I can actually answer questions as they come along. But if there's one piece of advice that I would give you, that is to absolutely stick to the basics. There will be a lot of talk in your peer group that there are these 10 industries that are very important. There are primers about every industry. You should know this and that. To be honest, do not pay heed to that advice. Do not read about industries. It's about the basics, which matters. Essentially, you know, it's about a business. A business has a company which is selling a certain product to certain customers, right? And they're selling it in a market which has other people also doing it. As long as you know that, it's fine. The companies are here to test your basic skills, build on them, prep well, seek for help because a lot of people have already done it. So that's all. I mean, do not be blinded with these points of light, as I call them.
Thank you for those quick insights, sir. And now finally moving on to Mr. Rishabh Verma. Mr. Verma is an alumnus of IIT Delhi from the batch of 2017 and from the branch of chemical engineering. During his time at IIT Delhi, he managed to publish a paper on the iGEMS journal for thesis, which had an impact factor of 2.8. He is a 2 times bronze medalist at the MIT Biotech World Conference. After graduating from IIT Delhi, he decided to do his MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, where he did some specialization courses in strategy, consulting, public policy, quantitative methods, and organizational behavior. Currently, he is working as a senior associate at the Boston Consulting Group. He has also worked on topics ranging from operations improvement, go-to-market transformation, retail strategy, and manufacturing excellence. Now, I would request him to kindly take over.
Yeah, thanks, Avi, for the kind introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. So I think, you know, Karthik and Ashish have broadly covered a lot of topics around how to prepare and, you know, what to focus on. Let me just share my insights from my personal journey of preparing for consulting interviews. And I thought I'll just share 4 tactical points around how you should prepare, how you should space out your preparation, and how you should, you know, focus on getting the things right to ace the interview. So in terms of, you know, the first step, I personally felt that finding like-minded people was very important while you're doing preparation. It's very important to get good people around you who give you good feedback, who you can practice on a regular basis, and also get to do a lot of case interviews on a very frequent basis. So I think that was very important, and that was something that really worked for me, because while I was doing preparations, I had never done preparations before, and the group that I was working with, that I was solving cases with, they really helped me get to that edge and confidence of solving cases. In terms of point number two, I think what really helped me was mixing it up across multiple kind of cases. So I think Karthik already mentioned a bit about focusing on unstructured cases. So personally, I also thought that as soon as you're comfortable with a certain framework, it could be profitability, it could be market entry, just maybe stop doing those frameworks and focus on another framework where you are slightly uncomfortable. And in order to have a more like a better experience of solving cases, you should mix it up across multiple kinds of frameworks. And as Ashish mentioned, industry knowledge is not important, but still sometimes it is helpful to try out cases for different industries also, because at times you are slightly caught off guard if you've never worked on a case of an industry which comes in the interview. Even though it is not a prerequisite, but I would still suggest that you can try out one or two cases for different kinds of industries. Third point I would like to make was, don't overdo cases at any point in time. I mean, it's very important that you keep the process very natural. At times what happens is you start doing cases, you've done, let's say, a very high number of cases, and you feel very mechanical about the process, and that is something that is not looked at in interviews. So if you feel confident about the level of ability that you can get to a case, the kind of insights you can find out, just maybe slow down a bit on your practice and just chill out for a bit. I think that was something that helped me also. And finally, I think the last point that I want to make was just stick to your fundamentals. I think you all have achieved a lot because all of you are part of ID Delhi, and you have your core skills, which are problem solving. So just stick to those, and inside the interview also, if it's a pressure situation, just remain calm, remain composed. Don't think of the interviewer as a person who is judging you. Think of them as a teammate who is just trying to solve the problem with you. I think that was broadly it from my side.
Thank you so much for that valuable advice, sir. Now I would request Rishika to take over and ask the questions.
Thank you, sir, for your invaluable tips. Now I will move on to the question session. So our first question, which is being asked, is in the interviews, can we expect questions apart from discussing the case? Mr. Rishabh, you can answer that.
Sorry, so you mean interview, does it have elements beyond the case study? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like apart from discussing the cases, will there be any other type of questions in the interview?
See, typically what happens is when you start off, there could be a brief chat about your profile, your CV, especially if the interviewer finds something which is similar to what he might have done in his career or something he finds exciting. There could be a small chat in the beginning about that. But honestly, the interviews that I have faced, all of them were just focused on the case study.
I would like to just add on to that.
Sure.
Yes, cases are the most important part. And it doesn't mean that cases will always be conceptual cases. You can get quantitative cases also, like guesstimates and all. But equally important part is the culture fit or the personal experience part. So I would suggest that you should prepare well for the second part also.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is what is the scope in consulting for people pursuing masters? The studying a subject in depth reduce the chances of person getting into consulting field. Mr. Ashish, you can answer the question.
Yeah, sure. I don't think having a certain depth of knowledge in a certain field reduces your chances to do anything. That's my take. I mean, consulting, while in the earlier parts of your career, you're expected to be a generalist. That does not mean that if you know something a lot more than other things, then you're not a good generalist. So I would say it's actually very even. If you have a special experience and expertise about something, good. If you don't have it, like, no problems at all.
In case you're speaking something, you're on mute. So
There was a question regarding online interviews. Since everything is virtual this year, I think the students want some insights into how you all feel the online interviews will work, because things will be different, obviously. Maybe one by one, if you all give your insights. We can start with Ashish.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that question. So let's absolutely recognize that this is like a very different time compared to all the years that have been before this, right? And doing an interview on video call will be a challenge if you're not kind of prepped for it. I would just say there are 2-3 things, and it's about basic video calling, right? That you have to get out of the way. In addition to the normal case study work that you will do, right? It's about, do you have a right working setup where you can sit for like 2-3 hours, a table, a chair, a computer, right? Do you have that setup working? Test it out, test your video out, test your audio out, so that there are no problems during the interview. So do some test calls with your friends, etc., right? Sit straight, sit right. I think those are the basic things that everyone would tell you. I'll just repeat that. But get the basic IT working and just knock that out of the park very quickly, so that you can focus on the meat of it, which is actually what you are, and the kind of problems you can solve, so that it just becomes like a normal interview for you, and the tech IT part of it you've already solved for.
Karthik, if you could add to
Yeah.
that.
Hello.
Yeah. So we were discussing this recently, and so the basics that are judged don't change. The way interview will be run won't change. As Ashish touched upon, it is super critical to ensure that your IT and everything is working in place. Our work has completely turned virtual. I've been working virtually with a client since last 7 months. It's not different at all. It seems different because you will be doing it for the first time. When we also started doing meetings or even team events, fun events virtually, it was difficult to adjust, but then it's how it is. I would suggest just 2 things. First, focus on your communication. It becomes even more important because the person who a person sitting next to you versus a person interviewing you virtually won't be able to understand. Say, suppose if you are drawing out something when you are solving a case, it is always advised to draw it out so that the person interviewing you can see your paper and infer that how are you structuring it. Now that won't be possible. Like what you are drawing out, it won't be visible to the person interviewing you. So it becomes even more important that you convey the structure of the case, the way you are walking down, the way you are breaking down the problem. That becomes really, really important. Second is always like the confidence, your posture, all that becomes even more important, because there are people who might be comfortable in person. Like it is always easier to break the ice in person versus doing that over a call. But I would, as Ashish said, that do practice it a lot. All your case interview, you have a lot of time next 2 months. So practice with on virtually only with your friends and seniors. So that will help you and ensure that your IT and everything is in place.
Rishabh, if you would like to add.
yeah, I mean, broadly resonating what Karthik and Ashish have said, and I think just to add a few points there. One point is that at in a physical setting, it's sort of easier to understand the mood or the emotion that the interview has. While in a virtual setting, it might be very difficult to just gauge that. So it's very important that you ask a lot of questions, and we never really stop suggesting that you should always ask a lot of questions, be it preliminary questions when you're starting the case, or in the middle when you're in the inside a framework and you're just checking whether things are going well or not. Just take regular pauses, ask a lot of questions. I think that will really help you build that rapport with the interviewer during the case. And I think, yeah, that's broadly it.
Yeah. Take gaps between your interview, because we even like I am in meetings 12 hours a day on Zoom, but it becomes really important in your back-to-back interviews. You're taking enough gaps. Feel free to take like you walking from one room to another is the gap that you get 5 minutes between the interviews. Ensure that you take that break, get your peace of mind again. You get time to step back before you switch on another video. Don't just jump across from one video to another.
Yeah, and I would just add to what Rishabh and Karthik were saying around communication, right? Uh, it is difficult when you are speaking with a person virtually and you're meeting that person for the first time, and alignment on what you're doing becomes even more important in the setting. Uh, you have to communicate your structure and whatever your thought process is extremely clearly to the interviewer, and do not go rambling around. There's this 50,000 word summary of what I'm wanting to do. It's just about what is the first layer that you're kind of working towards. I will look at profitability, so I'll look at revenues and costs, stop there, and then think about it and then say it, right? Versus saying the answer is ABC because of XYZ things. I mean, I would just say take pauses, align with the interviewer properly, and then take it forward. It will very soon become second nature to you, and it will come with practice. So when you practice these interviews with your friends, it will become second nature. Trust me. I mean, we have been doing this for 7 months now. No one thought that consulting and consultants can do without travel, but they can absolutely do without travel.
Okay. So, like on a lighter note, I would like to ask Karthik sir one question so that this does not become very much boring. Like, since consulting is a very exhausting job and like requires for minimum 14 to 16 hours on a daily basis, so like, how do you manage your personal relationships?
See, first of all, I've been working in with McKinsey for last 4.5 years. I would like to bust this myth that it's not that I've been working 16 hours for last 5 years. And I'm not saying that consulting is easy. It takes a toll on your life. And just two things that I would say here. First, you should draw your boundaries. Like I know the team that I am leading, there's one person who is married. So we understand that beyond X time, he is not working. So he communicates to me that I won't be able to do this. So these are the ground rules that I want to set. You can obviously set your ground rules, and those ground and everyone respects that because that's how we have been working. That's how we have worked since last 4 years. That's how a partner who has been in the firm for 10 years has worked. So everyone respects, everyone understands, and you should be vocal about it, about any of your personal, not just relationships, but any of your personal commitments, personal requirements. Please be vocal to your team, and everyone will ensure that it is met. So because if you are not happy in your personal life, you can't work, you can't give that kind of commitment on the work side. So that becomes really important. Second, I would say, please don't be scared about the working hours and all that can be managed, and it depends on what trade-offs you are making, what kind of decisions. Like I know people who joined McKinsey with me and never traveled on a single case. 2 years they were working only in Delhi. So you can make it work for you. It depends on what do you want. If you want travel cases, then obviously you won't be able to meet your family for 5 days. But it depends. Where do you draw your boundaries, and you decide what do you want to do in McKinsey.
Thank you, sir. And my next question to Karthik sir only. Like, sir, you have done your minor degree in management in IIT Delhi, right? So,
Yeah.
could you tell like how did it help you in consulting and like if it compensated for an MBA?
So I will not say that a minor degree compensates for MBA, but as Anchit touched upon that, see, it doesn't matter if you are coming from, if you're joining as a business analyst or a junior, if you're, I would say, if you're joining post IIT or post IIM, given the core working principles is around the problem solving, structuring the case, how well you do the discussions with clients, but being knowledgeable about those terms. Like what are the vocabulary of finance, vocabulary of org. That minor degree helped me with that, and I became I was more comfortable in the first go. So, but I will not say it's a make or break, or it matters that if you don't have a minor degree, then you will struggle. It's not that. It's just maybe 1 or 2 days of extra work that you will be doing at your case to learn those fundamentals. Anyways, when you start a new case, you will learn about the industry. You will learn about that particular function. So minor degree helps, but not as much as MBA. But even if you don't have it, then no need to worry.
Okay, sir. Thank you. My next question to Rishabh sir. Sir, what the students are asking, what difference does it make when one enters into consulting right after IIT or after an MBA from IIM? So, like, please comment with respect to short-term and long-term perspectives, especially when with respect to exit opportunities. Like, mostly people exit from consulting after a few years, so because of policy and also.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. See, in terms of actual working, I don't think there's a lot of difference. So, like Karthik mentioned, like previously Anchit also mentioned, I think it's broadly similar because 80 to 90% of your training and your learning is on the job while you're on the case. Whether be it about industry or the client working or the organization, it's almost all on the job. And so, in that regard, when you join from a IIT or an IIM, I don't think there's a lot of difference. Coming to exit options, see, in my experience, what I've mostly seen people after IIT doing an exit is naturally an MBA. So I think a lot of people go for MBA within either India or abroad. And I think that's one of the natural exit options because you tend to prioritize, MBA education and of course taking it further to using it to get more options in the industry. But beyond that, I think a consulting experience enables you to just have that kind of exposure across multiple industries and domains that it doesn't really matter where you're exiting and what you're exiting into. So be it industries like private equity, venture capital, or maybe industry like product management, the companies there might prefer someone with an MBA, but at the same time, if you're coming from a good tier one consulting firm, I don't think there's a lot of difference.
Thank you, sir. My next question to Ashish, sir. Uh, with regards to preparation, should people in circuital branches like EE, MNC, CS prepare any differently? Like do companies have bias against people with tech background?
No, absolutely not. There is absolutely no bias. As I was saying, uh, consulting is a profession which is of generalists, right? You have to do a lot of different things in your initial parts of your career. So I don't think there's any bias at all. The prep remains the same. You have to, and I'm sure you guys know there's books like Case Interviews Cracked, your videos of Victor Cheng, getting your basics right. And I'll underscore that one more time. You absolutely stick to your basics about the case interviews, right? You ask those preliminary questions, you understand the problem, you engage with the problem. All of that just absolutely remains the same. There is no bias. The only thing that happens, right, and which will, let me just tie it to the first question that was being asked on what happens in a consulting interview beyond the case. There will obviously be conversations around what is written in the CV. So just as an icebreaker, the interviewer might just start asking, okay, you did your internship here, okay, you have studied electrical engineering, or you've done textile technology, right? Tell me something more about it. So that's the only part where you will talk about the specific field that you have studied, but beyond that, probably not a lot.
Thank you, sir. Another question. Well, like many students are fearing about low grade point. So how, like, what is the way to compensate for it, and like how to cover it up? Like, anyone can answer. Rishabh sir, if you want.
Yeah. See, I think Anchit, broadly covered this in the first part of the session. Grades are important. I mean, there is no two ways around that. But at the same time, what's more important is, having those spikes in your profile. So if you may not have the best of the grades in your batch, you definitely need to cover it up with, maybe extracurriculars, positions of responsibilities, your internships. So any of those areas where you can show excellence and excellence beyond your batchmates, that is something that any consulting firm will prefer and will look for. So I think that would be my only advice, that wherever your interests lie, just try to pursue that at a level which you can make it from good to great. And I think that could be helpful.
Yeah, and I'm just sorry, go ahead, please, Rishika.
Yes, yes, sir. Continue, please.
No, I was just adding on to what Rishabh said, right? One, it's about a well-rounded profile, and that kind of compensates for everything. But the more important, and the second point that I want to make is the time to think about all of that has actually passed. You guys will sit for placements this year, so you must have already prepared your CVs or are in the process of. So right now you can't change your experience, you can't change your grades. So just focus on what is in front of you. Do not think about what has already happened. And in hindsight, you could have gone on to do this extracurricular activity or studied a little more. Just forget about all of that. Right now, what is in front of you is an interview. There is a certain process which you have to follow to absolutely ace it. Just do that. Just do not worry about what is in your CV, because you can't change it now. So that will be the addendum to what Rishabh said.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question which is rising repetitively, like, will the hiring numbers change this year because of pandemic? Like, if you can give your opinions in it. Karthik sir can answer this.
I think there's some. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm facing some issues with my. So see, it's a well-known fact that pandemic has affected all of us, all industries, and no one has been spared. But in terms of in McKinsey, we have respected all the offers. Everyone who was supposed to join this year has joined all the 150 offers. I cannot comment on the hiring numbers for this year, because that's a year-on-year decision that is taken based on what we are doing, what is the plan for future. But we assume the situation to get normal next year, but at this point of time, I cannot comment on the numbers.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
but just to add, the hiring will happen. It is not that the hiring is not happening.
okay, sir. So now, like, if you would like to share your personal experiences, like how you decided to go in consulting, and like when did you started preparing for it, if you could share those experiences. Anyone, like Rishabh sir, you can start.
Yeah. See, personally, I wasn't really that inclined towards consulting when I was in IIT. It was more around, I actually initially wanted to enter a core sector, but then later on, I thought that I'll first go for an MBA before I want to do a job, because I really wanted to learn more about businesses and how they work. And in my, I think, first year of MBA, that was when I sort of felt inclined towards consulting. And the primary reason was, I love to solve problems. I mean, like any kinds of problems, and the more the number, that was better and more exciting for me. And I thought that problem solving as a career could be a very good exposure for me. The second part was around learning. Like I said, I went to an MBA college because I wanted to learn about businesses. So naturally, the next step was for me to enter a field which enables to you to work across multiple industries, work closely with multiple business organizations, understand how they operate, and how you can improve their business models. So I think that was the area that really suited me and interested me, and that's accordingly when I decided I wanted to pursue consulting.
If Rishabh sir, thank you, Rishabh sir. And if Ashish sir and Karthik sir would like to add their experiences too.
Yeah. So a similar experience like Rishabh said, I wanted to uh, try and solve problems in multiple different industries, multiple different kinds of problems. To give you some background, I was a dual degree student. At the end of my third year, I was interning with Deloitte. At the end of my fourth year, I went to make my trip for a product management role, and I absolutely love product management. To me, it was like the best thing ever, right? Then when I came in, started that semester in which the interviews were supposed to happen. I just thought that product management was amazing, but what about a job which gives me that flavor but does not hold me back and does not confine me into that zone, that there is this problem that you will solve for days on end. You will continue solving this for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You'll still go to the same office. You'll still meet with the same people. That was kind of boring to me. So I thought consulting is that sweet spot where you will solve very interesting problems, just like I did in product management, which I absolutely loved. But those problems will keep changing every 6 months, every 7 months, 8 months, right? And yeah, so that is why I was inclined towards doing consulting. I would say consulting is proven to be the right choice. So if I look back, will I have done it any different? Probably not. So yeah, it's been nice.
Thank you, sir. If Karthik sir would also like to add something.
Sure. So from campus, I had pre-placement offer from ITC, and I had joined ITC actually, and I was there for 1 year. But as Ashish said, that while I loved my job at ITC, the kind of responsibilities that I had in terms of handling a team of 10, running manufacturing operations for 3 big brands of ITC, while I really loved that for 6-7 months, what I realized was, do I need to do the same thing continuously for next 2 years? Or when I talk to my friends in consulting, they're doing one project in, say, marketing and sales in a cement industry, then something in operations management, and something in digital and analytics, and that too in different geographies, different cultures. So I thought that this is the time that I want to learn the most and experiment in terms of aligning what I need to do versus at this point of time making a choice that I will do operations management for next 2 or 3 years. So I said that it's a right time for me to experiment, and hence I moved to consulting. And as Ashish also said that if I look back, that I would say that's the best decision that I made, because I got experience of working for 1 year in US. I did a mobility there. I have got experience in working in so many different industries and functions, ranging from digital analytics to operations transformation to merger management. But I could have never expected something like this in any other job. So that's the main reason why I entered consulting, and and in terms of preparing, I prepared while I was working with ITC. So I didn't prepare during the campus interviews.
Thank you all of you for your invaluable tips. Now I will hand over to Avi.
Thank you so much, Rishika. Anchit sir and Gopal sir had to leave in between due to some prior commitments. But thank you so much to each and every panelist for such amazing answers and linking them to real life examples. Every insight that you shared was very helpful. Finally, I would request Anisha ma'am to deliver a vote of thanks on behalf of OCS.
On behalf of OCS, I would like to thank all of you for giving your valuable time this Sunday and interacting with the students and giving them insights. I'm sure it will help them preparing better for consulting. Do aspire to become consultants. So many of the aspiring consultants, and we hope to see you all back on campus very soon. I would like to thank Mr. Goyal and Mr. Iyer, who are not there on the call right now, but who gave their time in the first half. And in the second half, I would like to thank Ashish, Rishabh, and Karthik for the valuable insights they've given us, their personal journeys, which have sort of brought them onto the same platform in different companies, and for giving your insights from these three perspectives to the students. And we hope to continue this association. Thank you so much for your insights. Back to you, Abhi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Lastly, on behalf of OCS IIT Delhi, I thank each and every panelist and every viewer who was watching us today. I sincerely hope all the viewers must have benefited a lot from such an amazing session. We hope to see you again next time for more such amazing webinars. Until then, stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.